Welcome to The Explainer. We've got an absolutely massive piece of news to unpack today, the kind of news that's literally going to shape the future of technology as we know it. So, on April 20th, 2026, the exact day Apple celebrated its 50th anniversary, Tim Cook dropped a bombshell. He's stepping down as Apple CEO on September 1st. And the person taking his place? Apple's hardware chief, John Ternus. If you were outlining a biographical documentary of this exact moment, this right here is your opening scene. We are looking at a monumental shift in Cupertino. We're talking about moving from an era defined by supply chain mastery to one that's going right back to its engineering roots.
Okay, let's dive into this. Tim Cook's official press release perfectly sets the stage for the kind of leader Apple has chosen. Cook notes that Ternus has the mind of an engineer, the soul of an innovator, and the heart to lead with integrity. And, this isn't just your standard corporate PR fluff. It's a very specific signal to the market. Apple is handing the keys to a leader who built his legacy directly from the lab, not from a spreadsheet. He is a builder. He knows exactly what's inside every Apple device because, well, he helped put it there.
And just take a second to think about the sheer scale of the institution Ternus is inheriting. $4 trillion. That's a 4 with 12 zeros. Under Tim Cook, Apple grew from a $350 billion company to a $4 trillion titan, pushing revenue to over $400 billion a year. That is the staggering, completely unprecedented scale of the machine John Ternus is about to take over. He's not just running a tech company anymore, he's managing a global economic force.
So, to truly understand how he's going to run this empire, we really need to understand his story. Here's our quick roadmap for today's explainer. The engineer's origins, his 25-year ascent, his role as the architect of Apple Silicon, what it means to inherit the keys, and finally, the AI challenge ahead.
Let's start right at the beginning. Section 1. The engineer's origins. Back in 1997, John Ternus graduated from the University of Pennsylvania with a degree in mechanical engineering. But what I find really fascinating is what he did outside the classroom. Ternus was an elite competitive swimmer. He was actually an all-time letter winner for Penn's varsity men's team, crushing events like the 50-meter freestyle and the 200-meter individual medley. Now, you might be wondering, why does that matter? Because the grueling, everyday discipline required in elite swimming perfectly maps onto the rigorous, coordinated team performance you need in elite hardware development. It's all about individual mastery feeding into a shared, uncompromising standard.
And this brilliantly illustrates the foundation of his design philosophy. For his senior project, he developed a mechanical feeding arm operated by head movements for individuals with quadriplegia. From there, he spent 4 years at a startup called Virtual Research Systems, literally designing 1990s VR headsets. These early projects combined really complex mechanical constraints with deep human empathy. It shows that long before he ever set foot in Apple, Ternus fundamentally understood what would become Apple's core philosophy. Technology should be invisible, it should expand human capability, and it absolutely has to put the user at the center of the physical design.
Moving on to Section 2, a 25-year ascent.
So the narrative shifts to the year 2001. This was a pivotal moment. Steve Jobs was rebuilding Apple from the ground up, and Ternus joined the product design team in July. His first major project? The Apple Cinema display. And there's this great famous story from this time where Ternus was at a supplier facility late at night, literally using a magnifying glass to count the grooves on a tiny screw just to ensure it matched their exact specifications. Over the next 2 decades, he's steadily climbed the ranks. By 2013, VP of Hardware. By 2020, he's put in charge of the iPhone. By 2021, Senior Vice President of Hardware Engineering. When he was tapped for CEO in 2026, he was already controlling the development of products that generate roughly 80% of Apple's massive revenue.
But it wasn't just what he built, it was how he built it. Bloomberg reported that Ternus actually reversed a trend of declining product quality. Think back to when Apple prioritized thinness over performance. Yeah, the controversial butterfly keyboard era. How did he fix it? By getting out there and sitting with his team on the open floor instead of hiding away in a closed-off office. He instituted a systemic, non-punitive leadership style. Basically, instead of hunting for a scapegoat when things went wrong, he looked for systemic solutions. And this collaborative approach effectively healed the historically cutthroat culture within Apple's hardware engineering division.
Which brings us to Section 3, Architect of Apple Silicon.
This is without a doubt the most defining technical achievement of his career so far. How did Apple fundamentally redefine personal computing? Well, they took a massive risk. Actually, scratch that. It was a monumental gamble. For 15 years, Macs ran on Intel processors. Deciding to ditch Intel to build their own silicon architecture in-house was huge. The hardware had to be perfect, the software had to translate seamlessly, and the manufacturing had to scale instantly.
And Ternus was the executive who spearheaded that execution. The Apple Silicon transition, starting with the M1 chip rollout in late 2020, delivered performance and battery life that honestly seemed physically impossible at the time. It completely shattered the conventional wisdom of what a laptop could do. Managing the simultaneous engineering across custom chips, complex hardware systems, and new software made it one of the most successful, flawless platform shifts in the entire history of computing.
So the crucial point is, Ternus's impact isn't just limited to Macs. Look at this incredibly diverse portfolio of hits. He oversaw the evolution of AirPods from simple wireless earbuds into FDA-certified hearing aids. He personally lobbied software chief Craig Federaggi to create a dedicated iPad OS, just so the tablet's hardware wouldn't be bottlenecked by phone software. He helped launch the ultra-thin Grade 5 titanium iPhone Air. And of course, he oversaw the incredibly ambitious hardware of the Apple Vision Pro. The guy inherently understands what makes a device feel premium and exactly how to push the boundaries of physical manufacturing.
Let's look at Section 4, Inheriting the Keys.
We're watching a fundamental operational shift happening in Cupertino right now as we approach that September 1st handover. For the last 15 years, the Tim Cook era has been defined by brilliant operations, unparalleled supply chain mastery, and the massive scaling of software services like Apple Music and iCloud. Cook is a pure logistics genius. The John Ternus era, however, signals a distinct pivot. This is a return to an engineering-first, laboratory-driven, product-focused philosophy. It's putting the ultimate hardware architect directly in the driver's seat, ensuring that the physical product dictates the strategy.
To really grasp this philosophy, look at this quote from his 2024 commencement address at UPenn, "Building the invisible as carefully as the visible." He shared an anecdote about Steve Jobs admiring the back of a wooden cabinet, noting that a true craftsman finishes the back flawlessly, even though no one will ever see it. Ternus has completely internalized this Jobs-era dedication to perfection. It's an obsessive commitment to the integrity of the craft, making absolutely sure that the inside of the machine is just as beautiful as the outside.
Finally, Section 5, the AI challenge ahead.
Now, it won't be all smooth sailing. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how Ternus is framing Apple's biggest perceived weakness right now. In an interview with Tom's Guide, he described AI as a marathon, not a sprint, adding that if done right, people won't even really notice or think about it. Apple has obviously faced heavy market criticism for lagging behind competitors in generative AI. And this is his defense. It's a belief that on-device, privacy-focused, invisible AI will eventually win out over flashy, cloud-based chatbots. It is a very neutral, strategic stance, basically asking investors for patience while Apple runs its own race. But we have to be honest, the hurdles are very real, and they are mounting. Objectively speaking, he has to navigate the delayed rollouts of Apple Intelligence and key Siri features. He has to deal with the App Store being flooded by low-quality AI-generated submissions. He has to manage Apple's response to aggressive right-to-repair regulations expanding across the European Union. And most importantly, he has to figure out Apple's next primary growth engine as the smartphone era matures. As a user, these are the hurdles that will dictate how your next iPhone actually works.
And on that regulatory front, Ternus is already having to navigate some public controversy. He has publicly defended Apple's controversial parts pairing policy, which restricts the use of third-party repair components, calling it not unethical. He argues that focusing purely on open repairability leads to unintended consequences that compromise the device's durability and user security. So it's a really delicate tightrope walk, right? Balancing Apple's historically closed, highly optimized design philosophy against the growing momentum of EU lawmakers who are pushing hard for consumer repair rights. Both sides have strong arguments, and he's right in the middle of it.
Which leaves us with the ultimate question as we wrap up this explainer. Can the architect of Apple's hardware build its artificial intelligence future? John Ternus has spent 25 years proving he is a master of the physical world, of silicon, titanium, and glass. But as he steps into the CEO role of a $4 trillion company, he has to prove that his systematic, incremental brilliance can successfully steer Apple through the most disruptive, software-driven technological transition since the invention of the smartphone itself. What do you think? Will the engineer's mindset win the AI marathon? Keep exploring, and I'll see you in the next explainer.